which we fund through our taxes, it is their responsibility to ensure that the public is safe. It's their role.
Take ownership. Take extreme ownership. Don't hide your delicate pride from the truth. Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad.
Hello, it's September 2025. I called it. I did say many times that there would be copycats of the fake heroes of the so-called convoy of freedom, and here we are. And not only are there copycats deliberately doing things to find themselves in legal trouble, admitting to it, but them going to authorities and telling them blatantly what they're going to do, their intent. Now, could this all be, for example, staged? Sure, whatever. Don't know. But this is where we're at now. We have a rising star fake hero going to challenge something that is in place to help prevent, perhaps even stop, not only destruction of land, but human and animal life. Now, what I'm getting at here is Nova Scotia and their fire ban and their signs saying there's no hiking because there's a hiking ban, etc. Now, you really have to stop and take note. When mainstream media, for example, even in the United States, are talking about it, vilifying a province or even Canada as a whole, you really have to pay attention to that, what the agenda is. Now, whether this person is, I guess a descriptive would be a paid shill, I don't know, I'm not saying either way, or if he's just being played as a useful idiot, that's probably more probable, but whatever. There's an agenda being played out here. And I find it amazing how truther and freedom types, we can also call them conservative types, are displaying serious psychosis, just like we see with those who do comply, who do accept everything that they're told through, for example, mainstream and official sources, call them liberal types. We see the same with them for a long time on the other end of the spectrum. And now we're seeing this with freedom, truther types, conservative types, and it's very, very clear. And they didn't learn from, for example, the fake heroes of the so-called convoy of freedom or the events that began in 2020. They're just getting sucked right into a new play on a stage. Now, with all that said, what is this all about? Well, Nova Scotia is a province on the east coast of Canada, and they've been experiencing extreme dry season. More than 75% of Nova Scotia is wilderness, trees, bushes, everything, and it's extremely dry. Now, relatively recently, at the time of recording this video, Nova Scotia said we're banning hiking, banning fishing, banning all sorts of outdoor activities on Crown land. Now, for those in the United States or elsewhere, Crown land is government-owned land. I believe in the United States it's called BLM land, whatever. But it's land that is free for anyone to use. However, at times across Canada, we see governing bodies having to step in and say, hey, we're going to be restricting activities or even stopping activities for a short period of time. Like this ban in Nova Scotia is ending around, well, the beginning of October of 2025. So it's not even a permanent thing. And they're doing this, one, because of irresponsible people, usually weekend warrior city folk who go into the wilderness and just make a mess of everything and are not responsible with their fire pits. And I've witnessed in Alberta these people leaving their fire pit going, and they go home. They leave the fire going thinking, oh, it's just going to burn out on its own, because they're too lazy or not prepared, for example, with water or a shovel to put dirt on the fire or whatever, and they just leave the fire. And in fact, one time I've seen, before they left, they brought a whole bunch of skids with them, wooden skids, and threw them on the fire and left. I don't even understand the logic with that. And I remember from where I was camped, it was quite a distance, and I was able to see this fire. It must have been at least 15, 20 feet up in the air. And I watched their headlights and taillights drive away and never came back. So eventually I went there and did what I could to extinguish it. But we see this a lot, not only fires, for example, but people leaving tons of trash in the wilderness. Even couches, sofas. They bring an old sofa out camping for a long weekend to sit on, I guess, and then when they leave it all behind, because hey, that's going to be someone else's problem. And I'm just going to segue for a moment. The people who do cleanups twice a year are volunteers from the off-road communities. And sometimes, a lot of the times actually, they work in tandem with governing bodies to do the cleanup. And sometimes these officials, these park wardens, they will ask for assistance because their vehicles cannot go to certain places, so they reach out to the off-road community. And again, we see off-road community being vilified by tree huggers and everything else, but I digress. So going back to Nova Scotia and this rising star fake hero, so they put a ban on everything, and this year they said there's going to be a $25,000 or $28,000 fine for anyone caught reaching those orders. Those orders are in place because perhaps, we'll just say, a handful at the least of irresponsible people who will go out, go for a hike, and think, oh, I'm going to build a little fire, and next thing you know, the province is engulfed in flames. That's why it's in place. The $25,000 fine, is it extreme? Yeah, I would say so. But why did they do it? Because in the past, and apparently in 2023 was the last time that they did this thing, they had, given out fines of whatever it was, but it was peanuts. It didn't stop or deter anything. People just said, whatever, and went out and went against orders, risking lives. Now, the other thing with risking lives is hikers can be trapped and campers can be trapped within, for example, a wildfire perimeter, say. So rescuers can't even get to them, and at times, if it's intense enough, helicopters would have a difficult time reaching them. So that's how it saves people's lives. And all these truther and freedom types saying, well, I'm responsible, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, good for you. Setting aside that perhaps you might make a mistake and cause a fire, let's, set that aside. It's possible, but probably not probable, right? We have a handful of people. So how do you determine who's who? Who's responsible? You just have to blanket the whole thing because of a handful of irresponsible people doing stupid things. And that's why this year they thought, okay, we're going to try a $25,000 fine. And now you have this useful idiot, that's all he is, going to the authorities saying, I'm going to go for a hike. This is where I'm going to go, because he wanted to get that ticket to fight it in court. And we've seen the same thing happen with these fake heroes of the so-called convoy of freedom. I want to stop here for a second. There was a lot of so-called leaders and participants of this so-called convoy that had no legal matters because they didn't break any laws. You just had these other useful idiots that did what this guy is doing now. And people are just like, yes, this guy's going to be the next bullshit hero. Excuse my language. Now, what's going to happen with this? He's going to try to argue, well, it's unlawful, that this is beyond what the government can do, the fine is excessive, everything else. And really, none of it's going to matter because the courts are not really going to care. Did you or did you not break the law? There was something in place, temporary, and did you breach that? Yes or no? Bottom line. He might have some success, maybe, doubtfully, to have that fine reduced, but he went ahead and breached the law. Now, what this useful idiot doesn't realize is that there could be peripheral criminal charges or quasi-criminal charges that could follow because he intentionally went and had told authorities what he was going to do. So there's no, well, I didn't know or whatever. Perhaps if he had half a brain, he would have just gone for his hike knowing that, risk getting a ticket, but he wanted to make sure he got the ticket. So he willfully broke the law. And that's going to come back on him as well. And the crazy part is all these freedom fighters and truthers and everything else, they're going to be throwing money at him and backing him up and saying, what a true hero, whatever. And all this really just ties into vilifying Canada and, for example, even the provinces. Because the psychosis of those people who call themselves truthers and freedom types is just off the charts. Just like we see with those who comply. For example, in the events of 2020, you have two extremes. And once again, there's a sliver of people in the middle who are standing and looking at both sides going, yeah, both sides are messed up. I don't know what more I can say about this, but I did call it. There would be copycats doing the same type of thing as these fake heroes of the so-called convoy of freedom. And once again, we see people who even, as a descriptive I hate using, woke up to the fact of these fake heroes and the useless convoy, but now they're getting baited into something else. Amazing. I might do another video on this. exploring more the psychological perspective, but enough said for now. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
If you want to know whether or not you have been lied to, if you can't see anything wrong with the side you agree with, and you can't see anything right with the side that you disagree with, you have been manipulated. There's so many psyops that are happening all the time. Some of them, when you say psyops, a really, really good infomercial is a psyop.
Right.
So what we're talking about is at the large scale.
Right.
The permission for our brain is emotional and tribal. It has full alignment with our identity. So when somebody hears a message that conflicts with who they believe they are, it physically hurts. And we call that cognitive dissonance.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.